Welcome to section 6.10. In this section, we're going to be studying credit cards. And we have four things that we want to accomplish as we move through this section that I've listed up top here. The first is to read a credit card statement. The second is to calculate the average daily balance. The third is to calculate the interest charge for the billing cycle. And the fourth is to find a new balance as we move into a new billing cycle. And so we're going to handle those four things in that order, which is how they appear in the exercise set, the homework exercise set for this section. And so the longest one, I was going to say the hardest one, but it's not hard, it's just time consuming, is number 2, calculating the average daily balance. Number 3 and number 4 are pretty much instant. Number 3 has a formula. There's a formula for interest, but it's very straightforward, especially compared to some of the other ones you've used. And to find the new balance on a credit card is simply adding two numbers. And so nothing earth-shattering there. So if we start our investigation, the first thing that you're going to see as you sit down to do the homework is they're going to give you a credit card statement like appears here. And just like in the previous section, 6.8, you had a mortgage statement to read and an amortization table more specifically. And all the things they're asking about were on that statement. And so the same thing's going to happen here. So as you look at this, they're going to ask you questions like, what is the interest rate of your credit card? And so you're going to look at this statement, and somewhere on there is going to be the interest rate. And so you can look down, it may be up top, it may not. And as you scan this sheet, I'll make it, I don't know if it allows me to make it bigger. Yeah, I think if I tap on it, I can make it bigger. If you look down at the bottom, it tells you your annual interest rate for purchases is 19.99%, which is very common. It might ask you, hey, what's your interest rate for balance transfers? And you can see it there as 2.50. They might ask you, hey, what's the minimum payment that you owe? And it's $36.63. It's up at top. What's the balance on your credit card? $3,663.23. Okay, and then when's your minimum payment due by? May 24th, right? You know, they're going to just ask you some of these things. They're going to ask what cash advances you received. And you can look at this and you can see, oh, I had $500 in cash advances. Were there any fees? Yes, $5.99, right? So I'm stating those numbers because I see them here, and you will too. So anything that they ask you, you are going to be able to find in the statement itself. So that's how it's going to open up. You'll have a series of questions that ask you about that. Then the next thing that they're going to talk about is calculating the average daily balance. So as we go to calculate a finance charge, an interest charge, so some that I think most when they talk about credit cards, they would talk about a finance charge. If anybody says finance charge, they're talking about interest, right? Interest is a fee in order to front you the money. And so as we move through, we need to be able to calculate this fee, right? We have an interest rate, let me bring it back up here, of 19.99% annually. And so we need to apply that to any remaining balance. If the individual only pays the minimum payment of, let me get to the top here, of $36.63, they're going to have a lot of money outstanding. And so we need to charge them interest. And so the way that they do the interest at the end of the billing cycle is they apply it to the average daily balance. That's the most fair to you because it says, okay, well, how much of our money did you have out on average throughout the month? Because we certainly don't want to be charged interest towards the end of the month, especially if we have a large purchase and have everything be that last little bit. And the credit card company has no interest in having you pay it off right before the interest is due. And so they use this average daily balance. Now, as I talk about all of this, keep in mind, none of this is ever assessed if you pay off your credit card statement in full every month. So credit cards can be a wonderful thing. They have a very negative connotation. That's because people often use them to buy things that they can't afford. But if you can afford to pay it off every month, it's a great way to manage your finances and to get points or cash back or things like that in the process. But if you can't pay it in full, that's when the interest is charged. It's charged on whatever is there at the end of the billing cycle. And so the way that they do this is they apply it to the average daily balance. So the average daily balance is a process. So here's the first question, and it mimics one that's in the homework. The billing cycle for this credit card goes from May 1st to May 31st. The balance at the start of the billing cycle is $450.21. The list of transactions on the card is below. So let me just take a moment to explain that. The individual that has this credit card has a balance going into the month of $450.21. And then they make purchases and payments. So every time you make a purchase, let me get here and put in a pen. I think I'm in eraser mode. I am. It's important to realize every time you make a purchase, you add to your balance. Your balance is what you owe the credit card company. So when we start the month, we owe $450.21. And when we make purchases, we add to that balance. When we make payments, it subtracts from our balance every time. So a purchase would add to it, a payment would subtract from it. So if we look at this 450.21 number, on May 10th, I'm looking at the box above it saying, hey, May 1st, the billing cycle starts and you owe the company $450.21. You don't do anything on that card until May 10th. And on May 10th, you make a payment. Now, your payment wasn't in full, but because you made a payment, you're going to take off $120 on May 10th. Then on May 15th, you're going to add to that balance because you purchased groceries. They're not going to call it a purchase. They're just going to say what was bought. And so, but you purchased groceries, sorry about my hand there, at $83.43. And so you can add to it. You would add the $45.12 because that's buying some auto parts. You would add the $85.34 just to, I'm not saying you do that right away, but I just want you to get in your mindset that payments subtract from our balance and purchases add to the balance because everything is from the perspective of what do I owe the credit card company. So let me come in here and erase all this stuff so I can stay close to the problem. You can back up the video if you need to in order to have those things in there. So as we calculate the average daily balance, it is a process because you have to be organized. What we need to know is how many days did a particular balance stay the same? And so we are going to always structure a table. And our table is going to have dates, balance, and eventually number of days. We'll do that last. And so I'll mimic the process here. We'll repeat it one more time. It's reinforced in the book. And this is going to be the large part of what we do because you've been through the statistics section, chapter, I believe that was chapter 9. You are going to be able to, maybe that was chapter 8, but you're going to be able to use your calculator to calculate the average daily balance very easily. So the dates that are important are May 1st. I'm just going to do them in order. On May 1st, we had a running balance of $450.21. So we write that down. Then the next thing happened on May 10th. I could draw a line in here just for my eyesight. On May 10th, we had a payment of $120. So we're going to take our $450.21 and we're going to take off $120 because we made that payment. So the new balance on my credit card after making that payment is $330.21. Then something happened on May 15th, right? On May 15th, we bought some groceries. You can see that above. And so buying those groceries would add $83.43 to our total. And so that brings me to 413.64. Every time we're just keeping track of our balance. So you're going to do these first two columns first. Then on May 26th, two things happen. So we're going to handle them both at the same time. We add 45.12 because we bought auto parts, and we add 85.34 because we went to a restaurant afterwards. And so on that day, our balance jumps up by those two amounts to 544.10. Then on May 30th, we have another purchase of shoes. So we add 98.23. And all I'm doing is adding these in my calculator, and we get 642.33. Now there's one other date that you need to write. We go till the end of the billing cycle, and we need this date for perspective. So I'm going to put it in red. Nothing happened on that date, but I need to know how long it stayed at 642.33. Okay. Awesome. Now we're going to go count the number of days. We have a balance of 540.21, and it stays that way until May 10th. So it was that way on May 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. That's 9 days that it was like that. Notice 10 minus 1 gives us that same 9. But it stayed that way for 9 days. Then on the 10th, it changes to 330.21. So it was that way on the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th. That's 5 days. May 15th to the 26th would be 11 days. It was like that, right? 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Then it changes on the 26th. And it's that way on the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 29th. So 4 days. Then it changes on the 30th and on the 31st. So 2 days it was like this. And then my billing cycle ends. It was the 2 days that are represented here are May 30th and May 31st. And we got 2 days. Now notice the total of those. 9 plus 5 plus 11 plus 4 plus 2. Total to be 31. We don't need that total the way we do it because you know your calculator. We have a 31. The book will demonstrate a formula to do this, but we have the use of our calculator. 31 makes sense because there's 31 days in the billing cycle. May 1st to the 31st is 31 total days in that billing cycle. All right. Awesome. The rest is to use your calculator to get the average daily balance. Average is equal to the mean. And you know how to use your calculator to find the mean. Okay, so how do we use our calculator to find the mean? Let me remind you. So I think I can bring this over here and manipulate over to my camera. So as I go to my camera, here's my calculator. And you know what we're entering in. We're entering in data. So data, it wants to know what's your first balance. And this is when I type in 450.21. And how long did it stay that way? Well, it stayed that way for 9 days, right? Let me go back and make sure you see that. You can back up the video. 540.21 stayed that way for 9 days. And then I go down because I have another balance to enter. I'm averaging the balance. That's why that's my data. Then the next number was 330.21 because I made my $120 payment. And it stayed that way. My frequency was 5 days. And I hit down. And then I hit the 413.64. And how long did it stay that way? 11 days. And I let it know 11. You might have a different calculator, but you know how to put those frequencies in because you did it back when we did the statistics. 544.10. How long did it stay at 544.10? 4 days. And then 642.33. And and it stayed that way. That was our last balance. It stayed that way for 2 days. And I'm going to hit down to accept that. This, because you know how to use this calculator, it makes this process so much faster. You can't get away from doing the table, but if you look at the book and they show you how to hand calculate it, it is a little bit more of a chore. Remember, we hit the stat var button to calculate, and it's going to tell us you have accounted for 31 days, which is perfect. And what are we looking for? The average daily balance, which is the mean. You know that symbol. It's that X bar there. So we move it under the X bar, and there's my average daily balance. For $442.39 was the average amount of money I had out on any given day. And so we take that number. Let me go back to the screen. I won't do that on the next one just because of the time that it takes, because now you have the process shown to you. But now we finished our average daily balance, and I want to use the acronym that they use, the abbreviation ADB, just because they use it in a formula, is $442. And if you remember, it was 0.388, so in 39 cents. Now you got the average daily balance. The interest rate will be applied to that number in order to figure out the interest owed or the finance charge. All that happens is you repeat this a few times. Why? So that you can do it when you come to the test. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but my promise to you is it's relatively nice. Okay. So now we have this statement right here. And apologize, I realized I wrote something down wrong. So here's what we do. We do the exact same thing we've done before. We have our date, our balance, and our number of days. And our first date is February 15th. You could do something like that if you didn't want to write out February. The balance is $292.82 going into that billing cycle. Okay. Then we see the next thing happen on February 21st. And what do? We made some purchases, so our balance is going to go up by $64.57 to be $357.39. Then on February 22nd, two things happened. I bought gasoline and bought food. Adding both of those in brings me up to $460.83. Then on February 28th, two things happened, right? We paid for insurance, and we also made a payment. So we add the 133, we subtract the 100, and it adjusts our balance up, right? Because you spent more for insurance than you made for a payment. So it increases it by $33.25. And so now we're at $494.08 for those days on that February 28th. Okay, awesome. And then March 3rd. On March 3rd, okay, it's a non-leap year, right? So there's only 28 days in February. So I scrolled up to see if they had said that. I purchased gasoline, so I'm up another $26. So now I'm up to $520.69. And on March 12th, I make another purchase of a school trip. How do you know it's a purchase? Anytime they label it as a thing, it's an expense. Okay, a payment or return would lower that one. I don't know if our book does returns, but they definitely do payments, as they all do. Now I got to write in one other date. So let me scroll up and see where that ends. The billing cycle ends on March 16th. So I have to have a March 16th in there. And in March 16th, I didn't write it up here, but I usually write billing date, because nothing happens there. But the reason why I include it is because it's a billing date. It lets me know the amount of days I need to add to that. So February 15th to the 21st should be 6 days. 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th. That's right, 6 days. 21st, 1 day. because it changes on the 22nd, and it's that way on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th for 6 days. Then it's that way, it's the 28th, March 1st, March 2nd, March 3rd, 28th, March 1st, March 2nd. Apologize, I should only stop there the way I've been counting. 28th, March 1st, March 2nd, so we got 3. And then we would have 9 days here, right? The 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. And then we would have this on the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and into the 16th, if we did it the same way we did above. Okay, and let me check something. 6. Okay. And so, how many days should we have? February 15th to March 16th. Okay, that's an extra day, so we should have 29 days. So this guy here, I miscounted, should be a 4. Okay, so we'll put our 4 back in there. But here's our guy. Now what do? We just grab our calculator. We clear that data. Maybe I should remind you how to clear data because it's been a little bit. So let me go back to this guy. As I go to enter in data, okay, it's got data in there. I don't want that. So if you remember, let me second. Sometimes it's hard to get rid of stuff. So if I go second, data, it gives me these options. And if I go 2 to the right, it allows me to clear the data. So now I'm ready to go. Okay, so I don't necessarily want to have you focused on me entering that in. It will take a little bit longer. So I'm typing in 292.82, hitting the down arrow and a 6. 357.39, down arrow and typing, leaving it as 1. 460.83, hitting the down arrow and putting that as a 6. 494.08, hitting the down arrow and putting that as a 3. 520.69, hitting the down arrow and having that be a 9. And then I think I wrote the wrong number here. Yeah. So that didn't make sense. So this isn't 800. It'd be 300 more. So it's 820.69. And so that's where I'm at now. As my 6th and final entry, 820.69, and letting them know that happened for 4 days. And then when I hit the calculate button, it tells me I got 29 days, which makes sense, the 28 days in between plus the extra day, 494.15. So it tells me that my mean, right, on a calculator that's X bar, or my average daily balance, because what I was putting in was balances and the number of days, is 494.155, and it keeps going. So we better say $494.16. That's how we're going to do our average daily balance. Now, my promise to you is that's the longest problem you're going to do. After this problem, you have problems like number 18 in the homework. Number 18 tells you that the average daily balance is equal to $4,312. That person's got a lot of money out, but that happens. It tells you that the annual interest rate they have a great rate, is 9.99%. That's really good for a credit card. And it's telling us that the billing cycle consists of 31 days, like our very first problem. And what they're asking you to do in all of these problems, so you'll do it in 17 and 19, is calculate the interest charge. How much do they owe in finance charges and interest because they had on average $4,312 out? Well, there's a simple formula to do that. It looks like this. Interest is equal to the average daily balance times the rate times the number of days, all divided by 365. Okay. So our average daily balance, the interest that we owe, is $4,312 times the rate. The rate is 9.99%. So make sure you enter that in right. 2 decimal places. So 0.0999. Keep all the nines. How many days was it like that? 31 days out of 365. Now, why the 365 on the bottom? Because you have an annual interest rate, and so the 365 is making it a daily interest rate. So all we have to do is type in what we see. You really cannot mess it up. 4312 times 0.0999 times 31 divided by 365. And having all that money out, they charged us $36. Here's what it looks like, 5858, and it just keeps going. So the interest charged would be $36.59, and you're done. That is the interest owed that month. Awesome. As you get into the next group of problems, they want you to find, this is what it says, find the balance on the credit card with the given interest charged and balance before interest. Awesome. Find the interest charge and the balance before interest. So let's go grab one. Let's grab number 22. Okay, the balance before is $621. That's the ending balance. So let me show you what that is up here. So let me use a yellow highlighter. This is the balance before the interest is a charge. It's not the average daily balance. The average daily balance is exactly what it is. It's an average, exactly what it says it is. It's an average of what you had out, so that we use that in order to apply the interest. But the interest is always applied to, well, how much of my money do you have out right now? And up here, the balance before the interest charge is $642.33. Got to help you out in the last problems, which combine everything. Okay, so the balance before interest is $621, and then they calculated the interest. Interest charge is $7.81. So whatever their interest rate was, when applied to the average daily balance, which is not on here, they came up with $7.81. Cool. So what they're asking for is the balance on the credit card now. So as you go into the next billing cycle, you owe the bank $621 because you have that of their money. But they're going to add to that $7.81 that you owe them for having money out. If you're paying off your credit card, you're adding always zero. So if we take our $621 and add the $781, we come up with $628.81, and we're done with the problem. Right? And so what have we done? Let me scroll up to the top. We've read a credit card statement. We've done the big work of finding the average daily balance. Calculating the interest charge is using that interest formula. And the new balance on a credit card is, well, what's the ending balance right before we add the interest plus the interest? That's going to be what's there and what's new as we go into the next billing cycle. So that takes you up to problem number 23. Now your homework goes through 27. So there's going to be 2 more problems where you do everything. They give you, and I'll mimic it here. So let me do the last problems. So what happens on the last problems? And let me get a different type of eraser. It should go faster. What happens on the last problems is they say, okay, find out everything. So the question says, determine the balance due at the end of the billing cycle. So if our question was, a little bit different. I erased too much. Let's see something for a minute. Yes, let me keep that. I did not mean to erase the average daily balance. Okay, so let's suppose up here, our question was not to find the average daily balance. The question's going to be now, let me just back up over here. Find the, and I'll write it, balance due at the end of the, whoops, that happens to me sometimes. I try to tap the space bar and I go a little bit low, at the billing cycle. Okay, that's going to be the last question. And the reason why I wanted to come up here is you're going to handle it the exact same way. The first thing to do is to get the balances out and calculate the average daily balance so that you know what the interest charge is. So the balance is going to be due, how do they word it? The balance due at the end of the billing cycle. That's going to be the balance owed, $820.69, plus any interest owed. So now you're going to be like, okay, cool. You're going to go through all this same work, come up with $494.16. Then you have two remaining steps. Let me get back to a pen. Your first step is the interest, which is the average daily balance times the rate times the number of days, all divided by 365. Now there's a problem. And the problem that I have here is they didn't tell me the interest rate. So let's assume our interest rate is the 19.99% that we saw on the credit card statement when we started out. So they would have to give us that, and they do in the homework as you have these problems. So 19.99%. So our average daily balance is going to be, had to do first, and we came up with the $494.16. The rate is 0.01. Oh, no, it's not 0.01. So let me go back. Got to move it twice, right? So it's 0.1999. Number of days, there were 29 days, right? It'd be 28 days if they went from the 15th to the 15th, but we're picking up an extra day, right, in there. So there's 29 days, and the bottom number is always 365 to make it a daily rate. So then we just type it in, 494.16 times 0.1999 times 29 divided by 365. And we come up with an interest owed of $7.85. When you do the rounding, it's 0.848. So we would round that 4 to a 5. So what's left to do? The balance owed is the amount we owed at the end of the billing cycle, which is $820.69, the number right above that's highlighted. But we got to add the interest, $7.85. So we take our $820.69, the balance owed at the end of the billing cycle, and we realized we got to give them that much money back. But I also owe them $7.85 in interest, which means that the number going into the next billing cycle would be $828.54. So then the next problem would read, if we were looking at the next cycle, hey, from March 16th to, whatever they say, April 15th or whatever they want to do, April 17th, this is what we want you to do. And so, and you would start that out with this number 828.54. So this models everything that's in your homework. Hopefully it's helpful to you. You can always reach out with questions or concerns, and your book is an excellent resource. But your past experience in using your calculator to find the mean, which is an average, is going to greatly assist you in this section, which is the last section we'll be looking at. All right.